Stay warm this season with Ariat jackets and vests available now at Cavender's. Ariat's built for every adventure with cozy warmth and rugged durability. Shop the latest selection of styles for men, women, and kids at your local Cavender's or on Cavenders.com.
Welcome to the Deconstructions Podcast, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, John.
I finally figured out how to take the metronome off when we record.
That was fun.
Take 3.
All right.
Oh, my goodness. So this one's a big one for me because
It is, man.
this is one of my, I'm not going to say childhood heroes because I was a young adult by the time I picked up on these guys, but
You were a total child.
I was. I'm still a child.
Still a child, too.
I'm an old child with a beard. But no, he's one of my favorite lead singers, probably my favorite lead singer. And it's my heavier, angry side. This is my gym
music. I didn't know
music.
this about you until we were friends for a while, that you have this angry...
Metal side?
Yes.
So it weirds people out because I listen to a lot of different kinds of music.
Yeah, you do.
Everything from 50s doo-wop, oldies.
You were like a choir boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a legit choir boy.
I know.
But
see, it's all coming full circle. Now I'm getting it.
See, I listen to classical music. So my iPod is schizophrenic. It's on a whole nother level.
It's multiple personality disorder.
All over the place. So so I have this heavy side, so I can, because I just don't understand people who go to the gym and they're trying to get that extra rep by listening to top 40 Europop. And I'm like, how is that pumping you up?
It's not working.
I don't get it.
My go-to is Rage Against the Machine.
I think that's a good move.
Yeah.
We talk about them.
Yeah.
On this. So I'm sure there's some fans out there. I know we kind of teased at this a year ago, I think on Facebook, and some people got excited about it. So I know there's some other Project 86 fans out there, but we got the lead singer of Project 86, the lead singer of London 6 Echo, Andrew Schwab.
Andrew freaking Schwab.
He is a super interesting dude, super nice. I always said one day if I ever have a platform where I can, help promote my favorite band, I would totally do it. So I approached him after a concert, and I don't know if he's ever going to listen to this, but who knows? But I approached him after a concert, and you have those days where you're you feel like the world's best salesman.
Oh yeah, no,
this was not that day.
I remember though that you were giddy, man. You were so excited when you approached him, because
yeah.
I think it was that night. You were just blowing my phone up with texts dude, I've got a great idea for an episode. This guy's been through it. He's seen the crap of CCM. He has been screwed over by the industry. He's angsty. He's rethought his faith. He's had a journey. It would just be a great conversation.
Perfect. Yeah. It just happened to fit so well. But that night, I was definitely not having an awesome salesman moment. So I just kind of walked up and I was like, hey man, so I got this podcast. We do this thing. And he was just staring at me. And he's just if you're asking if I'll do it, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, but then I felt the need to continue to pitch it for some reason.
Cool.
Okay, but and then I totally, he gave me the email address to email him, and I promptly forgot it as soon as I got back to the car because my brain was mush.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have mutual friends in the industry, so I was like, hey, dude, I know you got his contact.
You had the heart eye emoji.
Oh,
heart eyes?
dude, seriously.
Yeah, you were the heart eye emoji.
But I've followed these guys for over 10 years now, and was super stoked to get him on the show. And as you said,
yeah,
he's got a super interesting backstory. They started in the industry in a really unique time in the music industry, specifically for quote finger quote Christian music, where
which doesn't exist.
It's just music, good
music made by people that happen to be Christians.
Yes, and and so those of you who have listened to our prior episodes with Derek Webb and K-Max and guys like that who have kind of gone through a similar journey where they're look, we just tried to make good, honest music. This is a very interesting story. So we've got a guy he's a amazing lyricist who is the lead singer of a band who's seen the highest highs, the lowest lows, and everything in between. Got signed to a major label, and then that kind of fell through and kind of reinvented, their career, their sound, and all that sort of thing. So we kind of walk through that. But along the way, he's also a published author. He's a speaker. He speaks at a lot of the Christian festivals and churches and stuff like that. So he's just got a super interesting story and a really unique insight into that very bizarre industry.
He's a smart dude. You guys are going to like this combo.
So yeah, I don't want to go too much further, but I will say our friend who was convinced that I use Screamo music.
The one guy on Twitter that said,
he was convinced.
I love everything but the Screamo.
But the Screamo.
We had never used Screamo.
No, but.
Until now.
Until now. Still not technically Screamo, but it's definitely heavy music. So if you like heavy music, this is going to be great for you.
Yes.
If you don't, I'm sorry. You can come back next week.
Yep.
When we go back to folksy acoustic.
We're going to be back to folk, which is really, really funny because the last few episodes have been like the more Adam music. You put that, like, who was the guy with Kent Dobson? What was his name again?
John Bryant.
Oh, so good.
He's a beast, dude.
Beast.
Really, really good. So hopefully you guys are still enjoying the music. Last week, again, we had Eddie Berman, I think, is who we used last week. So if you enjoy the music, follow us on Spotify. We have a playlist. Just search in the Spotify search box for the Deconstructionist podcast, and our playlist will pop up. You can follow us. We update it every week. And as always, check out our website, www.thedeconstructionist.com. We have a Patreon campaign going with a lot of really cool swag and stuff that we'll send you, including a book club. So there's one in there where we will send you a book every month.
Curated books.
Exactly. So I don't know what this month's going to be. We're deliberating.
Yep.
So
got a couple options.
And a bunch of other cool stuff for anybody that donates on any level. We've already kind of said this on our Facebook Live, so we can probably let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, just say it.
So we're doing a little side podcast, as yet to be named, but Adam and I are writing original sermons, and we're also pulling famous sermons from like some of the biggest, baddest preachers of all time.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff, man.
And so Adam is going to do his best Spurgeon. And
I've always, he was such a beast of a preacher that I always kind of imagined that he actually preached kind of like Mike Tyson. Like he had this, I'm probably wrong.
And any of the Southern ones, I just assume sound like Colonel Sanders. So that's how I'm going to do it. So
no, but we just figured that a lot of you, church is a funny thing. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a really complicated relationship with church. I mean, if you think too hard about church, which probably if you're listening to this, you're plagued, like we are, of thinking way too hard about things sometimes. It's tough to oftentimes sit through a Sunday sermon. Like as well-intended as most preachers are, it's just either a bunch of rhetoric, or it's just kind of lukewarm, or it's just, sometimes Sundays are just tough. And there are a lot of good preachers out there. We've had a lot of them on the show, but for a lot of us, we don't have access to those churches or whatever. And sure, iTunes is great. You can download, follow different preachers from all over the place, or, whatever you're into, Ram Dass or Alan Watts, or, there's lots of really great stuff. But we thought it'd be really cool to curate and then write some originals and just call it like the Sunday Sermon Project, like as an alternative to whatever you're going through out there. So that's another thing that we're bringing to the Patreon, working overtime to give you guys some good juice.
So yeah, Patreon supporters will get to hear those first, and then eventually we will release those in full out to the general public. So look forward to that. And without further ado, Andrew friggin' Schwab.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight to hang out and chat about music and faith and everything in between those two things and around those things. We just really appreciate you hanging out with us and chatting for a little bit tonight.
Yeah, man. Same here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, this is a big dream come true for me. I've been a fan since, I was trying to figure this out today, since probably like 2099, somewhere around there. I actually came across, back in the day, most of our listeners are probably too young to remember this, but record stores used to actually have listening booths, and
They were the best.
they were so good. And I was in a record store in Cincinnati, Ohio, randomly with my girlfriend at the time, and I found this record called Drawing Black Lines, and I popped it in the booth.
Was it CD or cassette?
Oh, CD.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I immediately bought it, listened to it the entire trip home to Indiana, walked into my best friend's apartment, my buddy Justin, and he had a bunch of people over. I walked into the apartment, and he looks at me, and he's, kind of like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, shh, don't talk.
Don't talk to me.
I walked right into his stereo. I popped it in. I cranked it. He had this really nice surround sound. I cranked it up, and he was just like, words I can't repeat, And he was just like, what is this? And I was like, this is a new band I just found. They're called Project 86. They're amazing. And here we are, like, however, many years later, 17, 18 years later, and been following you ever since. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
I was just going to say, well, shoot, the pressure's on now.
Oh, dude.
That's right.
It's so on. You better not disappoint John here.
That's right. So this is a big year. You guys are celebrating 20 years in the business. You just completed a really successful crowdsourced fundraising campaign. Just finished this brand new album that's about to release. In fact, when we release this episode, I believe the album is dropping that day. So it should be out right now as you're listening to this. But let's start back at the beginning. So you started in the 90s, and a lot of the guys that were originally in the band, you guys, as I understand, went to school together. So, like, I believe, if I remember correctly, 96 was when you guys started?
Yeah, that was the year the band started, 1996.
Okay. So 98, you come out with your first album. And back then, like, there wasn't the social media that we have today. There's still this weird thing with, like, Christian radio is still, like, we joke because we have a station here called The River, and it's mostly like Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Bloop, bloop.
Yeah. Stuff like that. So it's like, so you guys really had to make it on your own. And one of the things that you guys were renowned for is your intense live show. And you guys really kind of started to make a name for yourselves through word of mouth. So leading into when you guys first got signed to Tooth and Nail Records, what was that conversation like? Did you guys sit down as a band and have a specific conversation around, like, like, we want to get signed, obviously, but is there specific conversation pertaining to, like, secular label versus Christian label, or was that not even a conversation?
Well, we all sort of came up, as guys going to shows of those early Tooth and Nail bands, and I think that was all of our first exposure to the idea that you could be a person of faith but still, do music in a way that wasn't lame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of friends in bands that were on the label, and it we were courted by a bunch of different labels really early on, but we all kind of wanted to sign to Tooth and Nail just because we thought that scene of bands was cool, and it really didn't come down to much more than that. We felt like we'd get some cool opportunities. If we went there, we'd definitely get a chance to, play with some of the bands that we liked. And I don't think there was a much more, in-depth conversation than that back in those days.
Just real quick, because, I'm just a little bit more new to you guys. John's, obviously giving me the history and a bunch of stuff to listen to and all that kind of stuff. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm curious, before we get into a little bit more about the evolution, what was your, like, upbringing like that led you to start making music? I mean, if you don't mind, just kind of think back to, did you grow up in church, like, listening to that kind of music, being exposed to that kind of music, and how did that kind of turn into eventually being Project 86?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I suppose my path as a music fan as a kid is a little bit different than a lot of the other kids who ended up, playing in bands that sort of came out of this scene. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up being exposed to Christian music. I guess that's not totally true. I grew up in Catholic church, but not in church in the way you mean it.
Yeah.
So I was not exposed to any of this stuff as a kid. And that was probably why when I was a teenager, a young adult, when I was exposed to this kind of world that I had never heard of, I thought it was really interesting. Because, I became a born-again Christian when I was, late in high school. And I had some friends who took me to like a Christian bookstore and showed me music. And I just thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But like I said, there were a handful of bands I liked that I found out about through a couple other guys, a couple different friends who were also Christian. And that was when the idea was sort of born in me, wow, you can do this thing. Because I was passionate about my faith. I just thought the idea of Christian rock or whatever was really dumb. So
you're not alone there.
Yeah. I guess I've never been a proponent of that idea. Always wanted to do it in a cool way, and that's not as obvious. I guess that the idea that you take something and make it Christian, it obviously makes it a lot less cool. So, but is there a way to just be yourself and make music that you like in such a way so it doesn't come off as like hokey? That was always kind of the vision for the band, and that was always the thing that I sort of gleaned from going to shows back in the day. The Crucified or some of those early Tooth and Nail bands, like Plank Eye and things like that. There was a real vibrancy and honesty about that scene. That I really appealed to me. And that's sort of what I translated and what we translated into like that first record and those early shows and developing a reputation for the band.
Very cool.
I think that was my experience too, is I didn't even realize that there were, because my only experience I think was like Sandy Patty. And so like when somebody said Christian music, I was like, oh, really? So I didn't know until I had some friends after I moved who introduced me to, there's like Christian metal and like Christian punk or whatever. And I'm kind of like you, I think, where I'm like, what does that even mean to be Christian metal? It's just guys who happen to be Christian who are making good rock music. But
yeah, what does that mean? I mean, since we're talking about it, I mean, a little off script, but like, we might as well just hit it now. Like, what does that mean? Like to be a Christian band, it can mean so many things.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that the concept of Christian metal or Christian rock or Christian hardcore it's a little bit of like a misnomer or an oxymoron. It's really just marketing, right? A way for people to sell records to parents who don't want to buy music that's dark or has foul language or whatever for their kids. And that's why Christian bookstore music was founded. It's an alternate marketing system to people who go to church, especially for parents. It's just an evil, I guess, but I mean, we also owe a lot of our fan base to such marketing concepts. So, I mean, the endeavor or the great goal of every band is to be taken seriously for your music and to be viewed as an artist, just like every other artist out there, So, I mean, these are just terms. I mean, to me, it's like there's good music and bad music. It doesn't really matter what the genre or marketing scheme behind it is. Decent music usually is going to end up speaking for itself.
Oh,
that's good.
Absolutely. So, let's go a little further down the line here. So we get closer to 2000, and you guys go into the studio and you make this album called Drawing Black Lines. And for better or for worse, that's kind of the album that you guys really became known by, or still known by in many respects. When you guys were making this album, did you guys have a sense for like this is something special, or were you guys just still kind of too young to know and were just making music that you loved at that point?
Yeah, I don't think we really knew what we had. We were definitely just having fun, and I don't think we really knew until the album was completely finished, how good it really was. And it wasn't until really we started getting people reacting to it. We didn't put a lot of overthought into it. I think it was good timing. I think we had a lot of hunger as a band, watching some of our peers, gained some success and thinking, hey, why not us? We need to really write a good record, and I think all the members of the band really wanted to make the same kind of album sonically. And it's really one of the few times in the history of the band where all the people involved were on the same page. We're not pulling in separate directions. We're all just, hey, this is the kind of record we want to make, and we'd learned some things from our first record. And so we wanted to go a different route in terms of like tempos and energy, dynamics and things like that. And so we really were just having fun. We really didn't know what we were doing. Even the recording itself was sort of a perfect storm of mistakes in terms of the way it turned out and the way it sounds and everything. It's not something that can necessarily be recreated. It was just kind of a piece of magic for a specific period of time where a lot of different factors sort of lined up to make this really special record to a lot of people. And you put on that album, there's just a lot of life to it. It's just raw sounding, and it's got a lot of energy and a lot of heart, a lot of passion. And you hear that we're having fun, and I think that was the key to it all, is that we were just enjoying ourselves making the music that we really wanted to make.
Oh man, still one of my favorites. But so around this time, like this album comes out, like I remember watching one of your documentaries and you just recounting the fact that all of a sudden, like just tons of kids start showing up to your shows. And I think specifically, I believe it was like Cornerstone or something. And there were just like kids everywhere. You couldn't even see the road and all this sort of thing. And so I can only imagine the mainstream record labels at this point are probably like, whoa, like there are these so-called Christian bands who are still selling a ton of records with half the corporate vehicle behind them. And so like I remember watching this kind of happen where all of a sudden all these bands start getting signed up, like your PODs, your Blindsides, or like even some of the punk bands like MXPX and stuff. And I remember seeing you guys get signed for Atlantic, and I was super excited for you guys. But the Atlantic experience did not go probably, and I'd love for you to talk about this, quite how you thought it would. And I remember reading some stuff about how when you guys sat down to actually record Truthless Heroes, that it felt very different in terms of the recording process than your previous efforts had.
Yeah, I mean, the dream for every band, I think around that time, was to get signed to a major label. And when we entered into that world, it was such a romanticized, it was like a fantasy to us, you know what I mean? And the reality is it's highly competitive, and there's a lot that goes into breaking a band, and a lot has to go your way in order to get the right opportunities to break your band. And so we found ourselves even on Drawing Black Lines, which was a licensing deal with Atlantic, really sort of getting lost in the shuffle of other bands in similar genres and things like that. We really didn't get much put behind the album. I mean, everything that Drawing Black Lines did, we kind of just did on our own, with touring, etc. I mean, Tooth and Nail was behind it to a certain extent, but they've never really dumped much in terms of marketing behind their bands. And we just, again, we were a small fish in a big lake for that album, but it sold enough to the point where Atlantic, ponied up some money and bought us out of our original deal with Tooth and Nail, and then we ended up signing to Atlantic, as our main label for a third release, which was Truthless Heroes. And then, with a bigger budget, more investment from the label comes, more cooks in the kitchen. And so, whereas on our second record, it was very free, it was fast, we were just being spontaneous, having fun. It wasn't very overthought. We were just doing our thing. The third record, there was like an expectation for us now to sell 1 million records or more. And so they wanted radio singles, and they wanted this, and they wanted that, and everything was really overthought and overwrought, and management and A&R and attorneys and just blah, blah, blah. It just really sucked the fun out of the whole process for us. We wrote Truthless Heroes for about 18 months. I think we ended up spending, like $400,000 or something to make the record, and it just wasn't as fun. It was just a really overthought process, and I honestly, personally didn't have interest in writing commercial pop singles. I wanted to write a heavier record even than Drawing Black Lines. I just wanted it to be brutal and honest, and that's just not what happened. We were sort of caught between a rock and a hard place with these sort of threats. Well, from the label, if you don't give us radio singles, we're not going to work your record, or we're not going to put out your record, or whatever. I mean, that's always sort of in play.
Wow.
So, the interesting thing I always tell people with that album is the finished product that was Truthless Heroes. If we just would have tweaked a couple things, it probably would have been a little bit different on the story. Like, we recorded The Spy Hunter during the sessions of making that record, but we didn't release it because it wasn't one of the songs that the label was excited about. But if we would have just put that song first on the record, I think the fan base would have been so excited that we would have carried a lot of momentum maybe into the more melodic singles on the record. I always talk about the song order, like just put that song first on the record, put Hollow Again second, and Another Boredom Movement third, and maybe SMC fourth, and you've got a totally different record.
Those are four of my favorite songs.
Yeah. And so just even the song order and the fact that we left Spy Hunter, one of the most memorable songs in our catalog, off the record, just shows you how overthought it was and how, like, we weren't the ones pulling all the triggers, sometimes with a lot of it. Our A&R guy was just so overly involved. It was an interesting time, and we got a lot of really cool opportunities just in being part of that world for a few years. And no, we didn't end up going double platinum or anything like that, but we sure developed a lot of experience and collected a lot of memories that most people don't get to, have as a part of their story. So, I feel like if anything, it sort of established the legacy that is our band, even if some of that is, what might have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I've always wanted to ask you, and this is, so like for people that don't know, I know there's some diehards out there who are well familiar with the album, but when you guys released Truthless Heroes, it came with this really elaborate, what I thought was like a really cool website. If I remember correctly, it was like a bunch of tiny like squares that you could click on that would reroute you to like different news sources and stuff like that. But the theme of the album was just kind of like, think for yourself, dig for the truth, that sort of thing. And I know when you guys were slated to release your second single, right around that time, if I remember correctly, 9/11 happened. And the second single, if I remember correctly, and you can totally correct me on this, was Your Heroes Are Dead, which is a killer song, but obviously like could not have been worse timing for like the mood of the country at that point. But like looking back at that album now, I'm like, man, I feel like it was just, it should have just, if it would have been released at any other time, I feel like it would have been perfect. Do you ever feel like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of the general tone was not in line with what the culture was feeling at the moment after the tragic events of 9/11, right? And so here we are releasing this album, sort of, not criticizing, but just taking a critical look at the culture in which we live. And, after 9/11 happened, all the world wanted to hear was something positive, you know what I mean? Because, I just don't think culture had room for anything else. That sentiment of the 90s where everything was kind of like, just on a darker tip lyrically, that all went away in an instant. You know what I mean? Because of 9/11. And so, it worked to the advantage of a band like POD, whose single was, I Feel So Alive. It's just very uplifting. Whereas we've always written music that's a little bit darker, and that was great up until that time. But when those events happened, it was like, it wasn't going to happen anymore. You know what I mean? In the pop cultural sense.
One of the things that I'm thinking while I'm hearing you just talk through all this stuff is just the idea of being an artist and wanting to express something honestly and creatively. in a way that, resonates with people on a very real level, and having to do that under the burden of different kinds of labels. And I'm not talking about like a record label like Tooth and Nail or Atlantic, but like the label of this type of music or that type of music, whether it's, Christian music or pop music or hardcore music, or like, whatever label you want to put on it. It actually brings to mind a quote from a song by an artist I like. Derek Webb's got this quote where he says, "Don't teach me about truth and beauty, just label my music." Because at the end of the day, art is supposed to connect on a very real level with something, with people, with truth and with beauty and with things that are very, a lot of times, confrontational, presenting truth in a way that you can receive it, where if, you were to just hear somebody speak it directly to you, maybe you couldn't, but when you hear it in a song, it kind of works. Whereas, when you're under the burden of a certain kind of label or an expectation to make this type of music or that type of music, it almost just capitulates to something that somebody wants. I wonder, does it draw away from the honesty of the art? Do you find yourself struggling with that in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that used to be a bigger fight than it was now is really, and this is the career trajectory of a lot of bands that have come out of this, faith-based scene, is when you first start out, a lot of the artists in one form or another are like youth group kids or kids that came out of, a Christian worldview and are just making music that reflect that worldview. Mm-hmm. And then when your band starts getting a little bit more successful, you start realizing, oh, this isn't that cool. Oh, other people won't listen to my band because it's known as Christian. So what can we do to sort of change that perception in people's minds? And it never really works. Once you're branded as a Christian band, it's kind of over. Yeah. So you have to be really careful, how you build, the thing from the beginning. And there's been a few bands that have done it the right way along the way, but not very many. Mm-hmm. And I think, in some senses, we were a victim of that because I think that we've written music along the way that, objectively speaking, should be a part of the greater heavy music conversation. It's not. Most of our music is not cheesy. We've written some really good songs that resonate with people. The sound is unique. And the live show is strong. And I'm not saying that. I'm trying to say that, just in terms of an objective viewpoint of our band in the greater conversation, if we weren't labeled as a Christian band. You know what I mean? I think we can hang, in other words, with a lot of those other bands. And yet, maybe we haven't been afforded as many opportunities as might have come our way if we weren't a little bit more careful about that perception building process in the beginning. So sometimes that's a little bit disappointing in looking back. I have to taper that with thankfulness because we've been able to do so many great things as well. If you start looking at what opportunities didn't come your way, especially in this business, you go crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, that's always been a fight, is to overcome a certain perception and to get people to just listen to the music for what it is.
Of the crown on your head. No mercy is shown when mercy's not given. Your halo will hang you instead. From the gallows to the grave, from the halos the scales they will hang. From the gallows.
So at this point in the career of Project 86, like you guys are coming out of this record contract with Atlantic, it's not moving forward like you kind of had envisioned it to be. And I can only imagine you guys must have been in probably your, early 20s at this point? Pretty young men.
Mid-20s.
Yeah, okay. So young guys with a lot of hope, and I'm sure a lot of dreams that, like things weren't quite going the way that you had planned it. And if I remember reading this correctly, I think you guys had basically gotten your way out of your record contract, right, with Atlantic, and were I know you're independent for a brief moment, and actually had recorded your follow-up album, Music to Burn Your Bridges, by independently before Tooth and Nail picked you guys back up again, right?
Yeah, we took a few of the songs from the Truthless Heroes sessions and wrote some more and released Songs to Burn Your Bridges by independently for just a really brief period of time, and then they bought it from us basically and re-released it.
So that actually is that's still probably my number one Prodigy 86 Jim album, because I call it your the Frustrated Angry album. So but like I see kind of like a couple different moments of rebirth throughout the career of Project 86. And I remember around this time, I remember talking to you after a show, and I think it was Indianapolis or something. And I don't remember if this is correct or not, but I feel like you told me that at one point during the recording of Truthless Heroes, Atlantic wouldn't let you guys tour or something weird like that. Is that right? Or am I making that up? I might be making that up.
Well, we were caught in this weird spot because we were really trying to be intentional about only doing general market opportunities. So it wasn't just Atlantic wasn't letting us tour. It was more like, you guys are good enough. This is what our camp is telling us, the label, etc. You guys are good enough and should be seeking out, real opportunities, not just like the Christian market opportunities. So I think we were all not overdoing Christian festivals, etc., but more just like, man, we need to be doing, Lollapalooza or, at that time Ozfest or, things that are a little bit more legit. We should be focusing our energy on that. And when, not as many of those opportunities came, we ended up not doing as much of anything, There was one summer, I think it was 2002. It was right before Truthless Heroes came out. We probably should have been on every Christian festival in the land because, we had a lot of momentum at that point. And I think we only ended up doing Cornerstone 1 because our focus was just on recording. And that's where that sentiment probably came from. It's like we were spending all of our time writing and recording for months and months and months and months.
Oh, okay. Wow. So like at that point, I remember you being like noticeably frustrated. I remember talking to you like, and I appreciate like just the honesty that you afforded me when we were talking after a show, just about like, because I remember specifically like I think it was literally the difference between the prior show I had seen you guys and that show, like was the difference between like, like the size of the crowds had obviously like gotten a little smaller and stuff, and I could tell that you were just frustrated with where the record deal went with like Atlantic and stuff, and I remember reading about the fact that you guys were as a band obviously very frustrated. What does that do? Like, what kind of conversations were you guys having as a band? Like, was there ever a moment where you're just like, man, I don't even know if we can keep doing this? And what does that do to your personal faith? Like, as you deal with probably what I would assume is your first really big obstacle as a band?
Yeah, those are really good questions. There was obviously a lot of self-doubt and questioning about what is to happen next, even in the midst of making Truthless Heroes, because it was really all or nothing in the minds of most of the guys and myself. Although I think I probably had a little bit more of a bigger picture view of it than some of the other guys. But it was very a difficult time. It was hard to go through all those things. Where it's like there was moments where we felt like all the difficulty we had gone through as a band in making that record was going to be worth it. When we're sitting in the president of Atlantic Records office and he's playing one of our songs and saying, "Are you guys ready to sell a million records?" My gosh, this is all going to pay off, And then it just doesn't work out that way. And you sort of feel like you're a victim of circumstance, and you're a victim of other people who are involved in the process, a victim of politics or management or whatever. A lot of that had a role to play. but at the end of the day, it's almost like things went the way they went for a reason, you know. And at that time, it was just really disheartening and difficult to watch sort of your dreams go up in smoke, you know. And it's very easy to get frustrated at the people around you, get frustrated at yourself, you know, get frustrated at everything in that process. That was really, really a hard thing to go through, you know. And I think the lesson that we were learning and that I learned is like, okay, what person would I have been had we achieved all of our goals? Who would I have been? What would my soul have looked like? I don't know the answer to that, but it may not have been a good picture, and maybe I was being protected personally, you know, from having too much success. And so, I mean, I feel like that answers the second part of your question. Why did things go that way? I don't have the answer to that, but I have a stinking suspicion it's because God loves me and he doesn't want me to lose my soul over, you know, becoming a gigantic rock band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you wanna see? I still feel the change inside of me. Into candlelight, behind the barricades. In cellar and cave, I will bathe in flame.
So like, you know, you've been making music and in and out of different, you know, in not genres, but, you know, different labels, you know, different expectations, you know, different, you know, sounds and all kinds of different things for so long. And, you know, you've interacted with power and fame and money and popularity and all those kinds of expectations, all the while being a person of faith. I wonder, how have you noticed that your faith has changed or evolved over the years through this long process?
Wow. I think, you know, my perception of faith in the context of Christian culture has changed the most. My faith has become a little bit more simple. Like, if I can articulate, like, how do I know God is in my life? It's just every day he shows up, you know, every day he does something that I really need but don't expect. You know, every day he shows me that he is trustworthy, even if I'm not, you know, and I just don't really deserve all the cool ways that he provides and gives of himself to me every day. And that has nothing to do with Christian music or the subculture of church or any of those things. I just know that personally speaking, he shows up every day of my life. And I think it's really easy when you're in the midst of, you know, being some sort of public figure or some sort of artist that, you know, certain people might admire and look up to or whatever respect, to lose sight of who you really are. And that is, you're just a person whose life on this planet is short, and none of this stuff matters in the grand scheme of things that much. And I certainly am not, you know, of course I'm special in the sense that I'm a unique individual who's a reflection, you know, of God, but I'm not like, I'm nothing in the grand scheme of eternity. I'm nothing in the scope of his, you know, larger plan or whatever. And you start believing that you are something great or something awesome because you're being told that by so many people. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
You know, I watched this happen to like bands, guys in bands over and over and over again. They start out and they're kind of humble and they're real people, and then they get big and then they turn into these rock star egos. And you start believing your own hype. And I just think that happens to everybody who does this for a living.
Yeah, man.
And it's really hard not to. And then at some point you come back to earth again and you go through this whole process, and hopefully, your soul remains intact on the other side, cause I know guys who've been in bands who started out as quote unquote Christian, and then they renounce their faith, and then they, become atheists or whatever. You've seen it happen a lot. This sort of way of trying to make a living really does do a number on people's souls. So I count myself as one of the fortunate that, my faith is still intact.
Yeah, no question, man. So I consider this that this period coming into like your second round with Tooth and Nail is kind of like the first rebirth of the band or whatever. You guys kind of get the second shot with Tooth and Nail, and you put out And the Rest Will Follow, which is one of my favorite records you guys have ever done. After obviously Music to Burn Your Bridges By, and just really enjoy that record. Still love it. So after a while with kind of re-signing with Tooth and Nail and everything, your original drummer Alex leaves the band, and one of the things I think I'm really interested about is the band dynamic. And we've got a lot of friends who are musicians. Obviously, we've got some mutual friends with the guys from House of Heroes and Dead Poetic and stuff like that. But something that always comes up with people who have been in bands for long periods of time is how they kind of liken it to a weird marriage. So what is that like when you have this vision and then you have a member whose vision maybe isn't the same as yours anymore, and they decide to step away from the band? Because obviously, for fans like me who have followed you guys for a long time, obviously you're the lone remaining original member at this point. So what was that like for you?
I think there was a unique chemistry created with the four guys that are perceived to be the OG lineup. For better or worse, we made some cool music during the time that we were, on the same page creatively and with the goals of the band. But I really think that dynamic was short-lived. It really sort of exhausted itself during the Drawing Black Lines era. And then when Truthless Heroes rolled around, that's where the disconnect sort of began, because certain guys wanted to move on with their lives, and it kind of became oh, okay, if we're not going to blow up and be a huge band, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then other guys wanted to be a rock band rather than a heavy band, and really, Drawing Black Lines was the last time we were ever really on the same page. So, I started Project. I put the band together. I kind of recruited the guys. I named the band. Really was kind of the driving force behind the vision of what the sound was supposed to be and where the band was supposed to go and how we were supposed to approach it. And so when guys, start wanting to pull it in different directions, the whole thing either needs to change and go a different direction, or those guys need to leave,
Yeah.
And that's sort of what happened eventually with, all those guys, is they had, the direction that they wanted to go creatively or with their careers or whatever in the context of this band. It just didn't fit with what the original vision was. That's not to say that, I was responsible for asking, guys to do this or do that, but that's just naturally what happened, and I think the season that we had together was strong, but I think it was the right thing when those members left when they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So coming out of your, I believe it was Picket Fence Cartel, your last record with Tooth and Nail. I remember as a fan, feeling the uncertainty, oh man, is this it for them? Are they going to still keep going? Because right around that time would have been when the last of the, as you put it, the OG squad kind of left the band or whatever. And then you ended up putting out this amazing record with some new guys, and what I felt perceived to be this reinvigoration of the band and this burst of creativity, and putting out just this fantastic record. Is that the way that you felt when you guys when you made the decision to crowdsource this thing and see if you could do it on your own?
You're talking about Wait for the Siren, which is the record that we put out in 2012, which has like our biggest single ever as a band, which was Fall Goliath Fall.
Yeah, you guys got on March Madness too, right?
Yeah. I mean, that song was just such a symbolic victory for just the band and for me personally, etc. In the beginning days of the band, the dynamic to writing the music was 4 people sitting in a room together and writing the songs. As it evolved, certain guys wanted more control of certain elements of the writing equation. And so it became this sort of fractured thing, which became more and more tense the further we went on. It was like this weird power struggle or something over the creative direction of the songs, etc. And you got an album like Rival Factions, which is kind of me waving the white flag to the other members of the band, saying, "Okay, you guys really want to be a rock band, so I'll sort of do a record that kind of goes along with where you guys are trying to pull this thing." But I always wanted to be like a more aggressive sound. So to be honest, Fall Goliath and Wait for the Siren as a whole as a record was creatively driven from top to bottom by me. I co-wrote with one other guy, but the driving impetus of all the music and the songs and the vision for the whole thing came mostly from me. And it was a new challenge for me because I took on way more responsibility for every part of the creative process, did like drum parts, do everything else, so, that's where that life energy comes from on that record, because, you reach a point where it's like you're dealing with guys who are not on the same page musically, and everything you end up writing feels sort of like a compromise rather than something that you're really excited about. And while I think every Project record has redeeming songs and really good songs, I think there's a lot of really strong songs on Wait for the Siren. And that was a really fun record for me to make because it was such an interesting challenge. And I think, the guys who were in the band previously were probably like, well, he's not going to be able to do this or do that. And there was, motivation on my part to go, oh yeah, you think?
Yeah. I say that had to feel pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt really good, obviously, because if anybody doubts you, that's great motivation.
Yeah.
Especially when you're playing like more aggressive music. So it was really fun to confront that and sort of come out on the other side with a record that was really, really strong.
Now, were you watching a lot of Braveheart at the time? Because I got that vibe from that album. It's like,
I mean, not just that film, but
Viking movies.
Genre. That genre of movies was definitely, those films are every guy loves that kind of thing. Whether we're talking about 300 or Braveheart or Gladiator or any one of those type of classic, old school war films. Yeah, we wanted to kind of tap into those emotions.
I love it. Have you seen the movie The 13th Warrior? I think that's the most underrated Viking movie probably ever made.
I've never seen that.
Oh
no, but I'll add that to the list.
You got to check that out, man. It's so good. Guilty pleasure movie. That's awesome. So to kind of fast forward a little bit, so obviously now, like, you put out Wait for the Siren, your first record, completely funded through fans and that sort of thing. So your music career kind of came along at an interesting point in time, because you kind of came out of the heyday of like when record labels were still really in control. and people still bought whole albums and appreciated cover art and, you know, the album artwork. And, you know, I remember I used to get excited just to look through the booklet and everything, to kind of this period of time that's very internet driven, very much like people just buy singles now. And, but on the flip side, you can also crowdsource an album, and it's kind of taken the power away, substantially from record labels, to the point where they're kind of hemorrhaging at this point and like just dropping artists like flies. What kind of a strange journey has that been for you to go from one kind of universe to this new uncharted territory we find ourselves in?
Yeah, it's definitely a different time in music, and we've been so fortunate to have a loyal fan base along the way, and they continue to want new music. And yeah, it is totally possible to put out records and to have a career without the benefit or without the help of a record label, which is, you know, at first was very disconcerting and scary, and now it's we've done it enough times. It's our third crowdfund effort that it's not scary. It's really invigorating, albeit a lot of work. But yeah, it's definitely a different time in music. We've lived through a lot of different incarnations of the music industry, and to be able to still survive and play music, we just played a bunch of shows in Europe to some really good crowds, and just blown away by the fact that, you know, I've been doing this for quite a while, and it's still vibrant. It's still fun. You know, it's still relevant in many ways. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, the mantra has always been, we'll keep doing this as long as the fans keep supporting us, and they continue to do so. And the crowdfunding angle just seems to strike a real chord with our fan base. They just really get behind it.
Yeah.
So that really benefits everybody.
So as you start to reflect this year, obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, this is, you know, you're putting out this new record, just released am I allowed to say the title? I'm allowed to say the title now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Sheep Among Wolves, is the new record that's coming out. And I'm super excited. You know, I've been a supporter, so I've gotten the honor and the privilege getting to listen to some of the new tracks and stuff. To me, it's just like, it's like comfort food. You know, it's like good old Project 86, but there's still like a ton of diversity in there. What were some of the motivations? What were obviously, like, one of the things that drew me to your band initially was just, I love good lyrics. I love thought-provoking lyrics, which is why I detest most pop music. Because to me, it's just disposable crap that, like, 50 years from now, we're not going to look at most of those songs like, oh, this is a classic, you know. But and you've written about a wide variety of topics. So what were some of the motivations? What were some of the topics on the new record?
Thanks for the kind words, by the way, about lyrics. I agree, and I always thought that you know, I don't ever want to be the type of lyricist that doesn't spend time on lyrics, and just sort of, you know, puts a few words down that rhyme and kind of leaves it at that. I always sort of obsess over it, and I try to make something unique out of each song, without trying to sound ridiculous, like I'm trying too hard. You know, it still needs to be like palatable, but hopefully, you know, create a picture or inspire some unique thought. So I appreciate that. Like thematically on the new record, there's a song that was pretty heavily influenced by Dante's Inferno, but it's just the idea that in order to get to a really good place, or even like a heavenly place, sometimes you have to go through hell. And so there's a lot of quotes from Dante's Inferno in that particular song. There's another song that I wrote about our culture's sort of obsession with physical transformation, like transgenderism, basically, and just sort of looking at that phenomenon and what the real sort of driving motivation is, for wanting to change your physical appearance or your physical identity. There's one song about that. There's another song that's sort of written in metaphor. This is the title track, Sheep Among Wolves. It's about just becoming, it's sort of a lament of a former shapeshifter who once had the power to, transform at night into, like a wolf man, basically, but who then lost the power to do so and is looking back on his life as a former shapeshifter and, missing it, basically. It's kind of an interesting song lyrically, and I don't want to give too much away because I think when people read the lyrics, they'll have some things to think about and debate about it, about what it's really about, what it's trying to say. But most of my songs are actually very simple, like what the theme is or what the message is. I just try to say things in a unique way, so it's not just cut and dry. But when you boil down most of the songs, and I say, "Oh, this song was about this," a lot of times it's not what people thought it was. And I like that personally.
Yeah. Are there any lyrics that you look back and you're like, oh, why did I write that?
Oh, tons. Yeah.
Especially when you were probably younger and you're like, what I think now, compared to what I thought when I was 18 or 19 or 20.
Yeah. I mean, those first couple records, definitely. There's a lot of material where I think that.
Yeah, it's almost like a, looking back, I would imagine like looking at your own journal, like that you started when you were essentially a teenager through adulthood. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of an interesting way to reflect on your life that most of us would never experience. But so as that leads me actually into the next question, which is from a faith perspective, you started this journey essentially as a teenager. You started this band out of high school, and now you're a grown adult, with a wife and kids. And if I understand correctly, you've recently moved back to Orange County, so you've come full circle, essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely been a winding road, but I'm back in Orange County, and thankfully so. I spent most of my life in SoCal, so it's kind of part of me now.
Snow's fun when you get to go skiing, but not like all the time. I can imagine that the weather in Orange County is probably a little bit more palatable. So,
yeah, I was in Colorado for a couple of years, and I found that I don't handle the winter weather as well now because I've been so spoiled.
Who does?
Yeah. So what's the future look like for Project 86? And what other, because you're obviously a busy guy. Like for most people that follow you, they know that you're an author. I've got I think all of your books sitting here. I mean, you've got quite a few books out. You've written blog posts for other publications. Obviously, you've got Project 86. You've also got London 6 Echo. I'm wondering if there's going to be more music there. And then obviously, you got the you launched a graphic design business. It looks like within the last year with some really cool stuff you've been working on. So what's the future look like for Andrew Schwab?
Man, that's a good question. A lot of my time is consumed right now with design work in addition to music. That's been going really well. And I'm doing some work for some cool companies. Did some T-shirts the other day for Stone Brewery, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah.
And the album art for the new project record. And doing some stuff, new logo for Uprise Festival in Pennsylvania, website for Joshua Fest. So hopefully that will continue to grow. Musically speaking, and for Project 86, we just finished the European tour, and obviously we have this new album dropping now, and we will probably be supporting that in various forms, doing shows. Man, I'm thankful for the fact that I have so many different creative outlets that have become viable for my life, that I'm able to provide, for my family and my kids and doing things that I love, that there's enough people who enjoy my work that I continue to get more work. I mean, if I can do that for the majority or all of my adult life, I mean, I would die a very fulfilled and happy person. I'm just really thankful that people care about my work and, you know, continue to consume it and demand it. And hopefully I can continue to grow as an artist and get better at my various crafts so I can keep putting out things that people enjoy.
So you still didn't tell me more Linden 6 Echo or no?
Oh, I forgot about that. Man, I haven't put a lot of thought into that recently. I mean, I have such a soft spot in my heart for electronic music.
It was super good.
And that's what that was born out of, was just that love for electronic music. It's just a matter of, you know, I only have so much time, and which endeavor is going to make the most sense to put my time into. And so unless I get some sort of crazy inspiration, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to say no. But at this point in time, all my time's going into Project 86 Pledge Music, fulfillment, and graphic design. And then we'll see what happens after that.
Nice. Well, nobody's mad about that. So yeah, like last question for you: Are there any artists or collaborations that you would still love to make happen at some point?
Oh man, I mean, there's tons of bands out there that I love. I don't know if it would make sense to do something creatively as Project 86 with. However, that was funny thing about Wait for the Siren is like a hip hop record. We had so many guests on that record, you know, and I was able to, you know, put a few voices on there that I've been wanting to hear on a project song, etc. I don't know, man. I have to leave that one open-ended. I don't have anything specific that I can think of, or any one specific that I can think of. But I'm sure, you know, some answers will pop in my head 20 minutes after we finish.
Well, I for one feel like if Zach De La Rocha never gets his act together and reunites with Rage, I would love to see you front that band. So just throwing that out there. Like the new Prophets of Rage thing's okay, but I mean, come on, you know, we can do better.
I was thinking more like Taylor Swift or
Yeah. Oh man, Schwab and Andrea Bocelli. Yeah. Very cool, man. Well, the new record is out now. It's called Sheep Among Wolves. Where can people go out and get it right now? What's the best place to pick this record up?
Anywhere digital music is sold is great. If you visit us at project86.com and you buy the record either digitally or physically, we get all of the proceeds. That goes directly to the band. So that's probably the best place.
Perfect. People, go do that. That. Support the artists. We're all about that. And for those that want to go see your design work, andrewschwab.com, is that the best place to go?
Yeah. Or follow me on Instagram, just aschwab86.
Perfect.
Sweet, man.
And I'm assuming you guys will come back through Columbus, but I can't recommend enough if for people listening who like heavy music, like thought-provoking lyrics, go out and see these guys live. I can't recommend enough. It's one of the best shows I've seen, and I've seen a lot of shows because I'm just getting older by the second, and so
you are quite the connoisseur, John. So
you
are to be trusted.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. This has been an honor and dream come true for me as a super fan. So
that's awesome.
I appreciate you taking some time out, and can't wait for the new record. I'll have it right now, so I'll have already been listening to it. So so go out and get it.
Thanks for hanging with us,
Right
Andrew.
on,
We
guys.
really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. Anytime. And thanks for having me. Appreciate all the great questions.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Take
man.
care.
To drown the grief, we drown the gain. We drain the water with the babes.
How you feeling, John?
Man, I feel like my dream just got, like that was my Make-A-Wish right there.
It was.
That That was
That
fun.
was your Christmas wish, Tiny Tim.
I enjoyed it. Do you think I just want him to be impressed with my level of Project 86 knowledge?
Dude, there's no doubt in my mind that he was super, super impressed with your Project 86 knowledge.
I didn't even unleash
Oh, I could tell you were holding
that
back.
was the tip of the iceberg.
It was
man.
just the tip.
I was like, part of me was like, I should probably pretend that I don't know as much as I know because I don't know what level it gets to be weird. So
See, when we were interviewing Derek Webb, like back in the day,
yeah,
I didn't even pretend. I was
about
like,
it?
just listen, I've been listening to you for a really long time. And I think this is really great. And I want to know what this one song is about because I was like, so I get it, man. You were much more poised than I was, which you always are.
I tried very hard, but sometimes it's tricky, man, when you're talking to your idol, you know?
Yeah. So no, great job. It's always fun. Like, you know, we could get in a rut if we weren't careful on this show of like always just having like philosophers, theologians, you know, things like that. I just think it's really important to get voices that are unusual for what we normally do. So he was great.
And there's something about like just a really good story that I think that I enjoy, that I think that other podcast listeners enjoy as well. So like, you know, sometimes it's you know, like we have episodes where like we just blow your mind right out of the window, like, and that's fun and that's awesome. And we love doing that. But sometimes like it's just fun to have a really cool, unique story, like insight
Absolutely.
into something that I will never experience. I wish, man, if I could go back to 18, start a band and be halfway decent at it.
Yeah.
Like totally. But
You've got the voice for it, man.
thanks, man. It's too late though.
But I think that this episode goes to show you just how complicated being a public figure in any kind of spiritual arena is, how much goes kind of wrong with that and right with that, and just how difficult and what layer of anxiety and burden and pressure and all these kinds of things. And I just really appreciated him just being open to all the questions we threw at him. I know a lot of that stuff probably isn't easy to experience, and it is traumatic. And that's one of the weird things about being an interviewer is you're like, hey, you know that wound that you're totally healed from? Can I rip that off? And can we talk about that a little bit? And could you bleed a little for me so we can all relate to you and feel a sense of like, you know, community here? But he was just great, man. He was so generous. And it was, again, really fun getting to, you know, watch you interview your hero.
I'm really glad that you just didn't whip out your phone and start taking video of me just like just
Oh, I did. And it will be
giggling.
It will be leaked soon.
Patreon.
On the interwebs.
No. That's on our YouTube channel. Kidding. But yeah, it was super fun. I'm super thankful that he was willing to do it. And of course, we played some old tracks from Project 86 throughout the episode. And I think we got the new single at the end here. So enjoy that. And of course, as of today, right now, that album is available on iTunes and anywhere that good music is sold. I think it's a digital only release. So go to your places where you download your tunes or whatever. But the new album is called Sheep Among Wolves. And I know some of the radio stations are already playing. I think the new single is called MHS. So I think that's already on local radio stations and whatnot. So if
if you're at the gym getting swole,
yeah,
if you're getting your gains and you got to hit the next level and you want to do so with a very generous, thoughtful, contemplative, cool guy who's going to scream in your freaking eardrums.
yeah.
Get Andrew Schwab in Project 86.
Dude, I love it. I love when he screams in my face.
I know you do.
It helps me get that extra rep, you know?
I'm glad that we hit this watermark for the Deconstructions podcast. Death metal, complete.
See, we've checked all the boxes.
We've checked all the boxes.
Death metal, done. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy that. If you guys are Project 86 fans, hopefully you had a good time with that one. Next week, you guys don't even know.
Next week, the episode next week is going to be so good. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
I'm leaving it at that. I want to wrap up this little episode here by just thanking anybody that's supporting us on Patreon. Most of the stuff you give honestly goes back to you anyway. We kind of set it up that way. It's more of a way to engage than anything else. But thank you for just wanting to be involved and for wanting to just be a part of what we're doing. It just means so much to us, and we're doing everything we can to consistently take this thing to the next level and reach out and have the conversations that you guys are wanting to have. So happy holidays.
Yes.
Keep deconstructing. And for now, we are your hosts. I'm Adam Narlock.
And I'm John Williamson, and I'm a very happy boy.
You're a very happy boy. Grace and peace, everybody. Happy holidays.
This earth was made to give me shelter from the waves. Winds rose, the ocean froze, found you dead asleep. You spoke and gave the order, the seas had to obey. Doubt grows and heaven knows why you're testing me. Just like you said you would. Take control before I take chances. Take the throne in all its romances. Trusting in the waves, praying they won't break. Can't rest all my hopes on this uncertainty. One shot, I must believe the sea won't turn on me. I'll float the blue forever. It's gone my only mate. Set sail until I slumber. Pretend I'm not afraid. Just like you said I would. Take control before I take chances. Take the throne and all its romances. Trusting in the waves, praying they won't break. Take control before I take chances. Take the throne's romances. Trusting in the waves, praying they won't break. Faithless world reversing steam. Engine kill, daylights breathe. Capsize every dream we could. Seas turn like you said they would. Faithless birth reversing steam. Engine kill, deadlights breathe. Capsize every dream we could. Seas turn like you said they would. Faithless birth reversing steam. Engine kill, deadlights breathe. Capsize every dream we could. Rogue seas turning on me. Just like you said they would. Take control before I take chances. Take the throne and all its romances. Trusting in the waves, praying they won't break. Take control before I take chances. Take the throne's romances. Trusting in the waves, praying they won't break. Just like you said I would.